What's going on, guys? I'd like to welcome you to the first edition of the Trap League podcast. It's something that I was thinking about doing this year. Obviously, last year we had Plummer's Points, and I did my videos on predictions and stuff like that. But I think joining the two personalities together will make it more entertaining to listen to, hopefully, and it'll force everyone to listen to us at the same time, as controversial
Boys,
as we
welcome.
are. This is something we think will add value to the league and just be entertaining for those days where you're at work or bored. Give you 30, 45 minutes of our time to talk about fantasy football and how much your teams suck. And we would love it if someone else would like to join us as well. I'm not sure how often we'll do this, but
I mean, Adam, this is going to be such a good experience for them. I'm thinking we may have to charge them after one or two episodes.
oh
Depends on the feedback, but potentially, $5 or $5 an episode. That's not unreasonable. Maybe we'll put it towards the league.
yeah, maybe that's not a bad idea. I mean, you have to listen to our opinions for free on the group me, so maybe one time or every week or so. But okay, but yeah, just throwing that out there. If anyone wants to join us, it's a Discord server that we're talking on. But like I said, we're not sure how often we'll do this, but we'd love to have one or two other people join us if you're willing. So I guess we'll just kick it off with just a quick icebreaker. What was your favorite part of the retreat, Plummer?
My favorite part of the retreat, I gotta say, I think Saturday night was eventful to say the least. I think going to dinner. Well, after the draft, even from the draft on, going to dinner, playing way too much roulette, trying to hit one specific number, and I don't know what the collective amount of money lost trying to hit that number was. But we kind of built a thing up there, and I really enjoyed all of Saturday. Then going to the club, and you know the Trappier League members got to see RL Grime, and we all really had such a good time. At least that was in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Other than part of Saturday night, that escapes my memory. I think Saturday night gambling before we went to the show was probably the most fun I had. Just even though we all lost money, but just having a table to ourselves and just I guess it
How
was just
much how much did you lose overall this trip?
I lost 700 ish, 750. I went in with 1,000 at least in cash. Went in with a
Okay,
thousand in
okay.
cash, came out with around 200. So somewhere in that range, which isn't too bad, I don't think. How about
No,
you?
I mean I've gone a few times to Vegas, and I always bring the amount of money I'm willing to lose gambling. I brought about $1,000 as well, and I lost like 400 or 500 of it like the first night. So then I really tried to cut back on the amount of spending because I didn't want to do that again. And I ended up taking the next $200 that I took out. I actually had it in my wallet when I was, well, not in my wallet, but I had it when I cashed my chips out on Sunday. So I was actually pretty even from Saturday or Friday on.
Yeah, I uh trying to remember how much I lost the first night. I think I lost around 400 of the first night. So yeah, but I didn't expect to leave with any of it, so I guess I can't really be mad at myself. And
Hey,
I
if anything,
think
you're $200 richer,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think Ray can attest to this, but the sports betting was another thing that if I lived somewhere where I could do that every day, I'd probably lose a lot of money. But yeah, those were probably the two most fun things that besides the draft, of course. That's always like a highlight, right?
Yeah, I think we got to take the draft out of it. Obviously, that was best. That actually physically was the worst part for me, but overall the best.
I can't imagine what you're talking about.
Well,
Okay. Oh, sorry.
no, I just to elaborate a little bit more on that, Ray. I didn't admit it to you, but I was freaking miserable during the draft. The layer technique. Definitely hurt. Uh, and I was gracious enough. It was gracious enough that you let me take the sunglasses off after 2 picks. But that really hurt, and I was dying. And well done, good win on that bet, sir. It's not going to happen this year.
I think maybe if you were a little more comfortable, you might have let me get Michael Thomas for less than $59. But uh,
No, I don't think so
okay, well,
because we had very similar draft strategies, and you just decided to spend more money on those two players.
yeah. Well, looking back, I would have loved to get DeAndre Hopkins for the same amount of money, but whatever. But okay. So just some quick news from the league. Uh, I guess the major things are Jay Ajayi is sidelined, still in practice. So their first game is next Thursday. So if that affects him at all, Corey Clement is probably the guy to own. And I saw that Ray picked him up basically when that news came out. So good job, Ray. Um, Doug Baldwin's close to full return, so he'll be good to go week 1 probably. Pete Carroll's been saying that all preseason, but no one believes him because he's Pete Carroll. Um, other than that,
Yeah, I think Doug Baldwin was on my target list this year as well, but I think you ended up with him as well, right?
no, Shorty got him.
Short, make sure.
Yeah, he got him for cheap too. It was like $22. So
Stupid Judge.
definitely a good buy. And the last thing is the Bills don't know who their quarterback is going into week 1 yet, so not really fantasy relevant, but I guess maybe to Paul. But that's just something I thought I'd throw out there.
It's also kind of fantasy relevant to Steve, who just likes to draft Bills.
Oh yeah, I was actually gonna talk about that later on. We can get to that. And then the last thing is obviously the first trade of this season, Julio Jones for Devontae Freeman and Golden Tate. Obviously,
So much drama around this already, man.
I know this is the most heated the group me's been in a long time. So, my opinion, strictly fantasy wise, is it is a great trade for Paul. It's a good trade for Wallet, but great trade for Paul. Getting 3 first-round picks basically on his team, and only sacrificing his flex player. And I mean, I'll call him your wide receiver 1 at the time, but he's basically like I would say Golden Tate's like a lower tier wide receiver 2.
I would definitely give him a wide receiver too. I think he and a lot of the Lions this year kind of regress backwards back to what they were doing 2 years ago. They kind of had a down year last year, and I think Golden Tate really had a down year last year. And I think he actually is going to be better than I think his draft value. I thought was higher than some.
Yeah, I mean Golden Tate, the 2 players, Marvin Jones and Golden Tate, on the Lions. I like Marvin Jones this year. I don't like him. I don't think he'll do anything near what he did last year. But I like Marvin Jones this year, and since we're in a standard league, non PPR, that's the only reason I like him more. Golden Tate, solid for 90 catches for 1,000 yards every year, but that's not.
Wide receiver 1 numbers,
Yeah,
no way.
no way.
Yeah, no, he's a very consistent. He's like one of those like you like having him as your wide receiver 2, or even in this league, your wide receiver 3,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is okay. Which is why I don't think the trade was that bad. I just really don't like. I think I think having traded Julio to Paul multiple times now, he could have got a lot more value for Julio.
Yeah, I agree as well. But it I don't have a problem with the trade. I just think it could have been more balanced. And now I came out of the draft thinking Paul, 3-star running backs, like okay, but his wide receivers are not good, and he has too many players, and now he has a legitimate wide receiver 1 without giving up one of his 2 RB1s. So
I know.
it's scary.
It is scary. It is scary. We'll see how it turns out for him. It's a that was a bold strategy going in, but I guess if he's got the got the in with Wallet, he can trade away. So
Yeah, it. I think that's one of the. There are a few reasons people were on the fence about it. Just because one, I think everyone else wanted to trade Wallet, which definitely hurt. Hurt the decision that like is going with Paul instead of anyone else. Also, just because it makes Paul's team that much better without making Walt's team as much better as it made Paul's team.
I agree. I agree. I think that is the main reason behind the hate on the group me today.
Okay, so talking a lot about teams already, so I guess we're just gonna go over everyone's team. We're gonna take turns and then have some input. Do you want to start? We can just pick someone's team, and then if you want, we can review each other's teams at the end or our own teams.
I think why don't we use the standard rankings of the standings post draft.
Okay.
And the first guy on the top of the list there who's projected the most points with optimal lineup selection throughout the season is Mr. Ray Bailey.
Yeah.
He's got the young trap lords. We'll see if they grow at all this year.
Oh, wait. So are you gonna go or am I going?
Yeah, yeah. No, I can. I'll start. Here we
Okay, you
go.
got
All
it.
right. So the reason I look at his team and I feel like I've had similar wide receiver strength to Ray in previous years. However, I am very down. Excuse me, Sam. I am very down on Houston this year. I never believed in Watson last year, even though he proved me wrong. But like he was on pace to smash the, and I'm gonna say it, the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. Like his statistics were incredible
They were
last year through
ridiculous.
what, six games?
Yeah.
Through 6 games. Like, I mean, we could have even Kareem Hunt or Dalvin Cook, who's on my team, right? We look at these guys that have these great stretches, or even Doug Baldwin, the back half of like 2017 or 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's just unsustainable. So I don't think it's going to be bad, but I don't think they should have been drafted as high as they were. Like number 2 overall, Deshaun Watson. No thanks.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing about the Texans is one, I think their division is going to be really good this year. You already have the Jags there. Andrew Luck is back. The Titans are primed to be in contention there. They made the playoffs last year, even with Mariota not playing that well during the regular season. Also, fun fact: the Titans and the Bills were the only two teams with negative point differentials during the season that made the playoffs. So I expect them to be better this year. I expect their division to be harder. And yeah, like you said, Deshaun Watson, he was on pace to throw a 16 game pace of like 60 touchdowns, which, Peyton Manning threw 55 in 2013. There's no way that he deserves to get that much hype and that his projections should be that high. So just a quick thing
Yeah.
on Ray's team too. I look at his team and I see my team from the first year that we drafted. My team where I had DeAndre Hopkins, I had Calvin Johnson, and then I had Eddie Lacy as my RB1, and then I had Bishop Sankey as my RB2. Okay, I obviously
Wow,
did not.
that's a name from
Yeah,
the past.
yeah. I
Jeez.
obviously did not do well that year. Not saying that you can really say that Ray is going to do the same thing as me, because it was my first year in the league. But having good wide receivers, two 2-star receivers like he has, it's great. But Tariq Cohen at your RB2 is gonna hurt you, and you're taking some flyers on James Conner, Corey Clement, Ronald Jones, but you need to have like at least serviceable RBs to win the league. I think.
I got to agree with you there, but in an attempt to be a little unbiased towards Ray, even though I don't really like his team, he does have strong wide receivers. Specifically, I'd say he's got 2 of the best. I don't think he has the best wide receiver core, but he does have 2 phenomenal wide receivers. But Again, that's only two positions on his entire team that really are like, ooh, I'm shaking in my boots. Jerick McKinnon, Tariq Cohen. At best, you can say, okay, well, one is a starting running back that is questionable right now, and the other is a third down pass catcher. So the number of targets and the number of touchdowns that you expect really from some of the strength in your core of your team, it's lacking in my opinion with these two guys.
I agree. And I just realized this. He also has Marquise Goodwin, so he's all in on that San Francisco offense with Jimmy Hansen thrown to him. Um,
I know.
and also, if you didn't see it, Alfred Morris had a pretty good preseason game, 17 rushes for 84 yards. So um, with McKinnon hurt, uh, Morris has actually proven that he's got fresh legs.
And I think wasn't Alfred Morris who was with Shanahan on Washington a
Yep.
few years ago
That
and had his good season.
Yeah, his first season of like 1,300 yards. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yep.
So hey, it's not a bad team, but I don't like the heavy risk reward here.
Nope, I agree. All right, so moving on. The next team is Jake's team, projected at 11-3 just from the Yahoo rankings, and I think Jake had the best draft out of everyone. Um, I look at his team and I see no apparent flaws or weaknesses with them, with his players. He has a lot of depth at, the important positions, and I like a lot of the players he has. If you want to pick something that might, if I was like, okay, this is definitely the thing that about Jake's team that I hate the most, it's Marlon Mack or Kenny Stills. But
Two guys on his bench.
yeah, exactly. Then that's it. Gurley and McCaffrey. I was a big Christian McCaffrey hater going into preseason. I was like, I don't understand why this guy's ranked so high. And then watching him in preseason, it's like Carolina seems committed to using him, and he looks great. He looks really really fast, and they're going to use him a lot in passing game as well. Uh, we talked about it at the retreat, but the one thing to be concerned there is, um,
Longevity.
can he sustain that many touches and stay healthy? So, I guess Allen Robinson, another player that I'm not too high on this year. He did have his 1,400-yard season 3 years ago on the Jags, but he hasn't done anything since then, really. And I think actually Jake was the one that had him that season that he broke out. So maybe this is just old habits dying hard.
Little player love right there.
Yeah, exactly. But I really don't have anything else to say about Jake's team. I like pretty much everything about it.
So I don't dislike his team, but just going through position to position, right? You got Russell Wilson, who was the number one running back last year. I'm sorry, quarterback last year. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. Damn. So I don't see Seattle with the condition of their offensive line and just the condition of their team overall in a strong division, forcing Russell Wilson to throw the ball more and more isn't really his game. He's a great quarterback, but I don't see him being the number one quarterback this year. So I think there's a little bit of weakness in this quarterback position. I know it's a hot take, I guess, kind of tough to say with the number one quarterback from last year. But and then I look into his wide receivers. The only one I really like, I would say, is Tyreek Hill. I think that offense is going to be really good this year. I think Adam Thielen he's got a new quarterback thrown into him this year. Arguably you can say that it's going to be a better thing for him with a better quarterback. But I mean, talent wise, I think Stephon Diggs has more talent than Adam Thielen, and I really feel like we're going to see Thielen regress to the wide receiver 2 on that offense this year.
I could agree with that. And I think he is definitely due for some regression. 140 targets last year, 91 catches, 1,200 yards, 4 touchdowns. I could actually see a positive regression for its touchdowns. I actually can't believe he only scored 4 last year with 1,200 yards. And I think Diggs is the better player. I think that is not, and I don't think you can argue Thielen is better than Diggs. Just Diggs can't stay healthy, and Thielen seemed like the go-to consistent guy last year. Better, I think he had better route running. Um, but
He was the safer target.
yeah, exactly. But Diggs is obviously a really good player. He's the better deep threat. Um, and one thing to note is that Kirk Cousins, when he was on Washington, he loved throwing to Jamison Crowder and Jordan Reed, those shorter routes, safer options, and I think that's where Thielen and Kyle Rudolph come in. So I definitely think they both have good seasons. I think the Vikings probably win the division again. I think it'll be close, but I think they'll end up they have the better defense, and defense wins championships. So in that case, also better game scripts. Now they're not going to be throwing as much. So
Yeah, no, I I agree with that.
okay,
All right, let's move on. Tyrone and the boys. Sam, let's take a look at your team here. Best quarterback in the game right now, Aaron Rodgers. I think we talked a little bit about in the group meeting, but that stack is scary with Devontae Adams. The only thing I will say is Devontae didn't get a ton of hype until I think just recently when they realized that he's going behind some of these other wide receivers in leagues. And they're like, well, Aaron Rodgers is healthy. How can he not have more than 885 yards and 10 touchdowns? With he had Brent Hundley thrown to him last year with that. So it's hard to mess with. That could be the best stack in the game right now. And it's going to win him some weeks, no doubt. When Devontae has 2 touchdowns, it's going to be tough to beat him. I hate Juju Smith-Schuster this year. I thought he was well overrated. I mean, with Antonio Brown soaking up as many targets as he does, all right, with Le'Veon Bell soaking up all the targets that he does, I mean, Juju's a little different player than Martavis Bryant, who really got those points from streaking down the field and making that catch. I don't think Juju is going to have the year everybody expects him to have. I would say he finishes this year like I think he's going to be like maybe a high-end wide receiver 3, if that.
I could agree with that. Juju had, I mean, if you look at his stats: 58 catches, 900 yards. That is a ridiculous yards per catch average. And last year Antonio Brown did miss a few games, so he was there. But Juju has looked great in preseason. I like Juju this year. I wish I had paid more than Sam for him. I just couldn't commit to him. But I think he has a good year. But I don't think you can expect the same kind of numbers out of him. Sure. And going back to Adams and Rodgers, if I love Adams this year. I just didn't want to all in on Packers like Sam did. And I figure Aaron Rodgers is good for 35 touchdowns a year if he's healthy. Jordy Nelson's gone. Jimmy Graham's there, okay. But you figure 20 touchdowns. 20 of those touchdowns he throws are going to be to Jimmy Graham and Devontae Adams. Then, 10 apiece. Like, I don't think that's ridiculous. It could be more than that for all I know. Because Geronimo Allison does not look good in preseason. We have 3 rookies on our team. Randall Cobb is always hurt. It's just, if he's got to throw touchdowns, he's going to those 2 guys. So I think it's a risky move, but if it pays off, it's going to really, really pay off.
Yeah, any way you slice 35 touchdowns and the targets that he has, he's got the 2 top targets. I don't think we're going to see Jimmy Graham of, New Orleans a few years ago.
No way.
But we're going to see, Jimmy get the red zone targets. He's big and he knows how to catch the ball. So
yeah, and I think he'll have probably maybe 600 to 700 yards, but he could have 14 touchdowns. So
that's true. He could, but we'll see, I guess. Excuse me. What else on his team? Zeke, obviously. I think I said or shared this with somebody at the retreat. I think Zeke was going to be my number 2 overall running back this year, um, behind Le'Veon Bell. So for Sam to have Zeke and Aaron Rodgers on the same team, God bless him, man. It's a good team. It's a good team. Um, Depth wise, a little bit. I mean, he's got a quarterback in Kirk Cousins that I don't know if you're ever going to play him over Aaron Rodgers. Maybe on the Minnesota week. You may want to. Uh, I don't see a situation where you would do that unless it was a bye week. But Mark Ingram, I'm not high on this year. Um, I Alvin Kamara is the real deal. I think he is going to take over that backfield, and he can do everything that Ingram can do, and he can do it better. And he's younger and he's faster. So I really see Alvin Kamara taking over that, and Mark Ingram had his best season last year, and now that he's suspended, definitely not going to do much.
What I'll just add to that really quick. Mark Ingram also is in the last year of his contract, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they just ran him into the ground when he comes back. He's going to have fresh legs. I'm not confident in Kamara's ability to be a 3-down back. He seems like too small of a guy, but I could be wrong, and I don't think that his 7 yards per touch average from what he had last year will happen again. I don't think it'll be low. I don't think it'll be like 3.5, but it won't be 7 again for sure.
I agree, but I also think that speaks to the regression of the New Orleans Saints. I think they're going to go back to throwing the football, and I think Michael Thomas is going to get a lot of work, and I think that I'm blanking on that guy's name right now. Ted Ginn is going to get a lot of work, and who is the guy that played for
Cameron Meredith?
Cameron Meredith. Thank you, the Bears. I think all of them have potentials to have great seasons, especially Cameron Meredith.
I was kind of going into this week, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll draft Cameron Meredith with a flyer as my last pick. Even with Michael Thomas, I was like maybe, but then I was looking at numbers, and he hasn't caught a pass all preseason, and he's played for 48 snaps, I think. So that's kind of concerning to me. And he is coming off that ACL, so
that's true.
I could see him having a good season, but I don't think he's worth a roster spot at the moment.
All right, let's move on. Sorry, I'm pulling it back up here. Who's the next in line?
Okay, so the next in line is actually Steve at 10-4. So Steve, I was going through my head on my flight back. I'm trying to think. I was listening to the Fantasy Footballers podcast, and they drafted Keenan Allen in a mock draft. I'm like, who in our league drafted Keenan Allen? I was like, I know Steve. I didn't think it was Steve because Steve obviously bought the 3 running backs. So I was like, I'm pretty sure he had just like dumpster wide receivers, but I completely forgot he had Keenan Allen. So Steve's team, I mean, it always writes a story. Three Bills, and then Hauschka, Shady, Corey, Coleman, and Steve spent big money on running backs this year. Kamara, Fournette, and also Shady. That was at least $140, $130, $140 of his budget. I can't remember how much Shady went for. I think it was around 20 something. And then spent money to get Tom Brady and Keenan Allen to the point where he only had a $1 bid on players. So Steve is gonna win weeks purely on his running backs. He won't need. Corey Coleman, Martavis Bryant, I don't expect them to be relevant at all this year, but those 3 players are going to win him weeks. They're going to each put up, 20 points each, and he's just going to be able to win with that. Tom Brady, I think he was QB 4 last year, 3 or 4. So
Hmm.
he's obviously, he's gonna be good like he always is. Even though they keep losing their receivers, but that's just more targets for Gronk. Um,
More targets for Gronk and more targets for James White, I think.
James White, not
Um,
you're not into the Rex Burkhead hype.
I mean, Rex is good. I do like Rex, but James White is going to be out there as a receiver. I mean, he's going to catch more passes than he's actually going to run. So I think they're going to look for this, drop down, let's get 6 or 7 yards every play and just move down the field on this no huddle offense. And then when they get to the red zone, they'll look for Gronk and there's a touchdown. I mean, it's the next player up kind of mentality for the Patriots, and it's worked for them for countless years now. So I think Tom Brady, it's a very safe pick in my opinion. I don't see anybody in that division this year really competing with them. And he's got bad defenses to throw against. So
That's true. I probably would have liked Steve Seam a lot more if he had not bought Tom Brady. He could have gotten. I mean, Jared Goff is on the waiver wire right now. He was my QB last year, and he was a top 10 QB. Also there's Matt Stafford, Philip Rivers. He could have gotten for a lot less than he paid for Tom Brady, and then use that money to get a better wide receiver too. Um, and there's another story within Steve's roster here because he only has 3 running backs who are currently all starters. So he has a lot of, I don't even want
holy
to call it
cow, you're right.
depth at wide receiver because all the wide receivers on his bench are flyers. They're not like a Jamison Crowder or someone that you can put in on a flex week or on a bye week
Yeah.
where they're gonna get you at least 6 or 7 points. They're players that legitimately week in week out could just put up 0 points. So it's not depth at wide receiver if you don't have startable receivers. Um, so with those
I
5
mean,
players, and then
not even that. He's got to play the hey, which guy's going to go off this week? I mean, there's probably no doubt that some of these guys are going to have good weeks, but you know, Steve's history of team management, I would say, is he's not playing to his strength here.
yeah, and I also just noticed that 3 of those wide receivers on his bench have the same bye week. So, um,
999. Yep.
I would say that Steve had the worst draft. This, in my opinion, that and not because I don't like most of his team, but the whole team in general. I just don't. I can't get behind. That I can't. The Corey Coleman, Martavis Bryant is your 2-3, and then the 5 receivers on your bench that are drop worthy. I just think that's enough for me to say this is the worst drafted team, um, and you're projected at 4th place. So
Well, he did the running back thing with one other guy in the league, and I think the other guy in the league just made a trade today to get rid of one of his running backs and pick up a stud at the wide receiver. So I gotta agree with you. I don't see him succeeding much unless he makes a move.
okay, so let's move on. Next team is PK's team. So you want to start with that?
Sure. Let me get to Matty Ice. First time I saw Matty Ice's team here, I was not surprised that leading the QB was Drew Brees. I think he's had him, with the exception of short 1 or 2 years over the last 5 years. I think he's had him at least 2 or 3. Um, David Johnson, I think that's a great pick. David John, it's really hard considering how well Todd Gurley did last year. David Johnson did far better the year before when it comes to points. And I know that there's a little bit of love there since he did with the championship that year with David Johnson riding him. His wide receivers, in my opinion, could be the worst. Um, Maybe not as bad as Steve's just because of the consistency. You're going to get a little bit out of all these guys. And, I don't think there's a risk for 0 points. However, the schedule of Mike Evans without Jameis for 4 weeks, I mean, I'm not into Tampa Bay at all this year. No, I don't think there's going to be, he'll probably have some touchdowns. I think 5 was a very low floor for him last year. But I do not see him really being the number one wide receiver of Mike Evans we saw 2 years ago. And then Lamar Miller is like he's like that guy that nobody really wants, but he does his job and he's going to get you those running back 2 points. So I do like his running backs, but his wide receivers I can't get behind. None of these guys I would have drafted.
Um, I I don't completely disagree. I mean, I think Mike Evans has a better year. I don't think he could have a worse year.
Double negative right there, Adam.
He can't have a worse year. Marvin Jones is gonna regress a little bit, as I said earlier, but I think he's still at least a low end wide receiver 2, a high end wide receiver 3. Robert Woods, I don't really like Robert Woods. I love Cooper. I'm a huge Cooper Kupp fan. Cooper Kupp led that team with targets last year. He in red zone targets especially. He was the guy.
Yep.
So I'm not big into Robert Woods, but I look at his bench. I see Corey Davis. I see Devin Funchess, and I guess maybe even Michael Crabtree. Those are all guys that I wouldn't be disappointed with having on my team as a wide receiver 3. So and I think Marshawn Lynch is actually his right RB2. Like he might have Miller there, but Lynch is the RB2 in my eyes, and Miller is the flex player. I think Lynch is going to have a really good year. He did really, really well at the end of last year once they started to run the ball more. And Miller, as you said, he's consistently okay, but I don't want him as my RB1, maybe even my RB2. So that's what I think.
I love the Raiders. Marshawn was on my list, and Paul just outbid me for him. So I really think Marshawn's going to have a great year, and he may even end up as a low-end running back 1, in my opinion. He has the potential. That offense is good enough, and they're going to be competing for the playoffs. So he's going to get the work. They need to win the games, and he's the guy there. I'm not afraid of Doug Martin anymore.
Yeah. Fuck Doug Martin, man. And yeah, I completely agree with you there. I think Lynch and Miller were actually on my lists, players I wanted, but PK and Short just flew away with the bidding war. So I was like, I can't. So but I did really want Marshawn. It's funny because a few weeks ago, and I think it was like the first week of preseason, I was doing mock drafts and he was going undrafted, and I was like, that's insane. Like people didn't realize the value he had until he broke off that 70-yard run in preseason. And they're like, oh wait, this guy. That's right. That's beast mode. So.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He's got a trademark.
So yeah, I think I like his running backs a lot. His wide receivers are good enough, and I'm sure he will manage his team well during the regular season. And he has Minnesota defense, so
they're going to be good. They're going to be very good contenders this year for the Super Bowl potentially. So.
Well, I hope.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
I know you don't, but get swifty.
This is Paul's team, a lesser, a less severe version of Steve's team initially, at least. 3 big running backs: Bell, Hunt, Freeman. I think you could have not gotten. I mean, he regretted getting Freeman right as soon as he won him. But if he hadn't won him, I think would have used that money for an AJ Green, a Doug Baldwin, a Mike Evans, somewhere around there, so he wouldn't have been so screwed. But luckily, he basically just got Julio Jones for him. So wide receivers looked ugly on draft day, with Calvin Benjamin being your first wide receiver that you drafted.
With the news today, though, Keelan Cole is starting to look better and better. Those targets are going to have to go somewhere. And with Marquise Lee out, I mean, that might have been a big break for him right now. He's a 1% start rate right now. That's good news for Paul, who who's pretty lucky sometimes.
I no, definitely for sure. And the fact he has DD and Keelan Cole definitely helps the situation because those two, in my opinion, they're the guys that are gonna be there to replace Marquise Lee, Allen Hearns, Allen Robinson. Um, it's hard to it's I can't actually I didn't even realize it till right now. Their top three receivers last year are not on the team anymore. Um, and Keelan Cole at the end of last year had pretty good stats. I can't remember specifically what. Oh, I actually no. I don't know what he had. I think it was like
7.
20 catches for like 300 something yards. I'm screwing this up, but they were pretty good yards per catch average and also 3 touchdowns. So um, he
Well,
definitely had a better role.
here's what I think is going to obviously after this trade, he's going to have uh, he's got a pretty balanced team. I mean, who's he going to throw in for his or for his flex? I mean, he's going to have a flex. He's going to have a wide receiver decision to make. And until Delaney Wallach gets hurt, he really only has two guys that he's going to switch in or out every week. So he's living or dying by his draft right now. And I'm going to make the claim right now he's not going to have the most waiver selections this year just because of the way he's built. Unless, one of his or two of his big names go down.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, there's no one on this roster I see Paul dropping, uh, unless there's a clear roster decision that needs to be made. I think Paul likes his team too much to drop anyone. Unless Keelan Cole or D.D. Westbrook emerge as the one, I don't think he could safely drop either one of them. So, without, more so the fact that he won't have them and someone else will.
Right, exactly.
So, that's probably the only concern there, right? He,
Maybe his defense because we know the Chargers can't stay healthy.
I don't know. I like the Chargers this year. I like them a lot. Even with the injuries, they were still good last year.
They were good last year, but the Bills kicked them out of the playoffs. But I see the way I think they're going to be good is not via defense. I think their offense is phenomenal this year. I think Anthony Lynn, second year there, he's going to drive the whole offense through Melvin Gordon, who's got the talent to do everything. He was on my list as a target this year. So I think Philip Rivers has a decent year, but as far as his connection with Keenan Allen, I don't think we see that for 16 games. He's going to have, he's going to have a 300-yard game once, every every 3 or 4 games probably. I think a lot of it's going to be driven through Melvin Gordon, who's going to be the Todd Gurley of this year.
I hope you're right. I really like Melvin this year. They improved their offensive line this offseason. Losing Hunter Henry really, really sucks for that offense. He was the guy this year. Past 2 years, Hunter Henry has kind of been in the mix. You're like, okay, well, is Antonio Gates like not playing? Because if he is, then Hunter Henry's like a tight end one. And now it's Antonio Gates is gone, and you're like, okay, Hunter Henry, he's my guy. He's a instant maybe top 5 tight end. And he gets hurt early preseason, not even preseason, and it sucks. Because they were with him, I think they would have been like a shoo-in for the playoffs, but now it's a little more difficult for him. So
yeah, it's one less target for Rivers, who really only has 2 targets, I would say, on his team right now, not including Melvin Gordon. Mike Williams, I think, is going to be a red zone threat, and I think he's actually going to steal quite a number of touchdowns from Keenan Allen this year, who I wasn't entirely high on, but we will see. Let's move on.
I'm hoping you're right about that one too, because I guess that perfectly segues into my team. I have a placeholder name. I don't know what I want it to be, so I just made it some emojis. So if anyone has a suggestion, real suggestion, I'm all ears. But I'll let you talk about my team first.
Okay. First of all, I think we had very similar draft strategies going in this year. Cam Newton, I think, is going to have a great – I mean, he's set up to succeed right now. I think that uh, with the exception of his receivers, he's going to have to run the ball. He's going to have to throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey, these dump off passes, and I think he has a big year. He's going to have probably at least 6 rushing touchdowns. I want CJ to be good, but realistically, chances are he's not going to get those. Cam is gonna push the ball in. Michael Thomas, Larry Fitzgerald. The only thing I see with your wide receivers is that you're going to be extremely consistent. I mean, having Michael Thomas last year, I loved him. He was great. He ended up a wide receiver one, but he didn't have those big boom weeks. He had the solid 9, 10, 11 points every single week, and you can never be disappointed with it. But, you really want one of those, 30-point weeks from Julio Jones or Amari Cooper, occasionally to help you win a week. Because if you don't get any of those and you're just consistent, 92 or 95 points is very beatable on a week. So, with that said, I do like your receivers. I already spoke about Melvin Gordon. Royce Freeman, CJ Anderson was a 1,000-yard rusher last year behind a very similar offensive line that he has this year. He is a rookie, and I tentatively I think that we are overvaluing rookie running backs. We've seen the success Sam has had over the last couple of years with that strategy. I think it was kind of a freak thing when we first started the league. We had that crazy year with Odell and Sammy Watkins and the crazy wide receiver league, and everyone bounced back to the running backs since Zeke started. And I think we're going to start to see some more rookie wide receivers or even wide receivers be the key to the league here. I'm not a huge fan of Royce Freeman. And then Kenny Drake's like it's a coin flip. He could be the guy. He could be the guy that gets the work. He clearly showed that he has the talent down there last year, but I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity. The team doesn't seem to like him very much.
And I don't
And
I
they
don't
brought
get that. I was like
big
watching.
Dick Gore in.
Yeah, like how you have a 24-year-old talent who proved that he is able to run the ball well, and you're gonna bench him for a 35-year-old player who's probably in his last year. Who, I mean, Gore is an anomaly. He does what he does, but
He's a freak.
the speed isn't there. He's that, like, he'll give you a good 3 to 4 yards a carry and pound the ball, but Drake, I was not high on him. I'm still not high on him, but I don't know how Miami can look at that situation and be like, yeah, you know what, not him.
I know. I don't get it. And then let's take a look at your bench a little bit. 3 names on that list were New England last year, and now, 2 of them are still there. So you're just kind of with Rex and Julian. I mean, we know Julian will be the target, right? He'll be that guy when he comes back. But if anything, aren't you? You're not picking one horse and riding with it. You're going with both. You're hoping that Rex is the guy for the first couple of weeks, and then Julian takes a spot afterwards. Or what was the thought there?
Thought process was I like Rex Burkhead. After seeing what he was doing towards the end of last year, and I would not have drafted him if Sony Michel was not injured. I did see that Sony Michel is back at practice though, but it doesn't concern me. Because Rex proved that he was able to do what they needed, and even though they spent a first-round pick on him, especially coming off an injury, I don't see why they would just throw Sony Michel into that role. I did tentatively consider not getting him because he is a New England running back and can't really trust those. We saw him like Mike Gillislee last year, but for I think I paid $3 for him or something around there. I think it was worth the risk, especially if he's able to produce for those weeks that Edelman is out, and then I can put Edelman back in for a flex or my wide receiver 3. So
that makes sense. I guess that makes sense. What about Dion Lewis, man? I'm not convinced after what I saw from Derrick Henry last year in the playoffs. I mean, the guy is a rumbling, tumbling, hard guy to tackle because he's so big, and I think I think Tennessee's going to be pretty good, and they're going to be ahead in games, and they're going to want to run the ball, and I don't think that's Dion Lewis's that's game.
No, and I was actually talking to Short about this because Short is the one who has Derrick Henry. I can't, for whatever reason, I can't stay away from the Tennessee backfield. Past 2 years, I had Derrick Henry when DeMarco was there, and this year I have Dion Lewis when Derrick Henry is the guy. Um, but I like Dion Lewis because he is a like a Tevin Coleman. He has standalone value in an offense that doesn't have a real down the field threat. You know, you have Corey Davis, you have Taywan Taylor, you have Delaney Walker, but uh, there's no other than Delaney Walker. There's no guy where you're like, okay, Marcus Mariota, you're gonna definitely throw it like to that guy, and I can see them doing more pass catching or sorry, running back like screens or something like that with Dion Lewis. Not that they have uh, a player that can is good at it. Not that Demarco wasn't, but Demarco was the more of the three down back, and then Derrick Henry sucks at pass protection and is not good at pass catching. So, you know, Dion Lewis is going to get the work there. And I really those two players I drafted them more as bye week fillers who I won't start them expecting them to score a touchdown, but I think they have a solid enough floor where I can put them in if I need them. And you mentioned it earlier. My draft strategy this year was just about consistency. I wanted players that I could trust to get me points that might not have the I'm not going to put up 150. If I put up 150 points this year, I'll be so surprised. That's not going to happen. But I wanted a team that I could rely on to get me 100 points a week or 110 points a week without worrying about who I'm starting. And I think I did a good job with that because for me personally, I would rather lose a week because my opponent scored way more points than me than lose a week because my players did not perform well. And I think that was my mindset going into this year. I'm pretty satisfied with my team. I think I have really good depth at wide receiver, and I would even say running back because I think later in the year I'm not gonna start. I'm only starting two running backs, and I think I fully expect Royce Freeman to take over the role in Denver, be a monster. Just looking at his preseason film, he looks so good, and I'd be surprised if he didn't have the starting role by like week 3 or 4. So,
Hey, it's possible. It's possible. I don't dislike your team at all, Adam. I actually do like it. But for the sake of time, why don't we move forward?
yep.
Um, Wallet is next. Um, it's going to be tough to talk about this one without being too unbiased. Carson Wentz, in my opinion, he has everything to prove this year. Yeah, he was pretty good for the games that he started last year, but so was Deshaun Watson, and you guys know my opinion on that now. I think he's a similar situation. Receiver wise, I think obviously you can't speak poorly about Antonio Brown at all. Julio, I have high hopes for this year. I really think he's going to more than 4 touchdowns. I can't believe he only had 4 touchdowns with almost 1,500 yards last year.
Well, he didn't. He had 3.
Uh, I'm sorry, 3 touchdowns. My bad. With almost 1,500 yards, that's crazy. Um, his running backs, obviously, he just got Freeman, which reminds me a lot of the trade that I made about halfway through the year last year to get a running back because I had a great wide receiver core. And I was like, oh, all right, Freeman will be the guy. Not not the same not the same offense that was there when they went to the Super Bowl. And frankly, Freeman was a little disappointing. Um, I really think that we could see more and more Tevin Coleman this year as kind of change of pace, mix things up kind of guy. He'll probably have a game or two that'll be great, but I don't see him ever jumping back into the strong like top 5 running backs. He's on a kind of casual decline. Um, But let's Jarvis. I love Jarvis this year. I think it might be because I'm watching Hard Knocks. Um, but I really like what he's been doing. I like the way he approaches the game, and he doesn't give a crap about anybody. He's going to go out there, do his job, catch the ball, make blocks, and not take a play off. And then we see that Wallet picked up DJ Moore. He made a lot of changes for being so happy with his draft. Uh, you know, 3 days away from the draft. Uh, I think Dez was I guess, a bold move. I don't know if he'll probably find a team, but even then, I mean, he was a head case in one of the best positions he could have been last year, with a rising offense in Dallas, and then that kind of whole thing fell apart. Which um, so overall, I'm not a big fan of drafting two defenses, but the strength of the boomer bust is there for him. I do think he's gonna lose a number of games though when he sees some of these guys not get him the 22 points he's hoping for or drafted him for.
Yeah, and I mean that's gonna happen. I'll just say a few things, really quick points. First point is that his bot auto drafted two quarterbacks with the same bye week, which I just realized. Also, if Dez signs with the Browns, you're gonna roster 3 Browns players on your team wallet, okay? And also, I'm actually kind of disappointed in the auto drafting bot because his running backs aren't great by any means, but they're better than what I would have liked him to get. Because I think they are serviceable, but you're not starting those guys with confidence, obviously.
Definitely not. He's hoping to get the 20 or 30 point weeks out of AB, Julio, and Gronk though,
Yeah,
which is going to be really tough because you could see a week where he gets 100 points from 3 players,
exactly. But
which is scary.
yeah, I mean, and that's gonna happen. So it's gonna happen at least once or twice this year. But I guess that's all I have to say about his team. And if he decides who he wants to drop between Andrew Luck and Carson Wentz, assuming he does, I think they're both question marks going into this year. So I wouldn't know who to tell him to start. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and also Baltimore plays the Bills week 1, which is probably a good start. So we'll go on to your team now. Quick. We're at 56 minutes, so we'll try to get through these last 2 teams pretty quickly.
All right.
So I'll go over through your team. I and I don't know what specifically I said to you Saturday night about fantasy, but I don't hate your team. I know we've been kind of shitting all over your team all weekend like we usually do, but that's more you're a victim of circumstance, not actually because your team sucks. I think. I don't hate your team. Your starters at least. I don't. I like AJ Green this year. I think it's like Mike Evans. He can't do worse than he did last year. He's a top 10 talent, top 5 talent if he's able to stay healthy and Andy Dalton actually throws to him like accurately. Because I mean, you look at those numbers: 142 targets, 75 receptions. Come on, like
yeah.
Demaryius Thomas, I like the Broncos this year. I think they'll have a way better offense, and I think I actually like Sanders more than Demaryius Thomas. But I think as a whole they'll all do better. And Cortland Sutton's there now too. I like him.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough to roster him right now, but I do like Cortland Sutton. Amari Cooper. What's there to say about Amari Cooper's year last year? I think the statistic I heard was half of his yards came in a quarter of his games. So, or more than half of his yards, because he had that one monster 200-yard game. So,
yep.
That is actually it's so hard to believe because he had 2 great years before last year. The Raiders just as a whole regressed and weren't able to do anything. But he'll have a better year this year for sure, and I think he would be your wide receiver 2 if you had to rank them. So I actually really like Amari this year. I'm kind of upset I didn't want to commit to him, but as I said about my team, I was looking for consistency, and I don't know if I could trust him enough this year. Even though I think he's going to do better, I just wasn't worth. I didn't think I wanted to take that risk. Your running backs, I like I said, I love Jordan Howard this year. I think the Bears are gonna do better than last year by a lot. I think that division is gonna be really hard. But you look at what Matt Nagy did with Kareem Hunt last year when he used him. You know, Jordan Howard, and they're saying he's gonna be the third down back or three down back. He, you know, 2 years on a really shitty team, like really bad team,
really
like,
bad.
and he's averaged over 1,100 yards a season, over 7 touchdowns a season. It can't get worse for Jordan Howard. If he's done this with all the bad that he's had on his team, it can only get better. And I think he could be a mid-tier RB1 by the end of the season. Now Dalvin Cook, I'm not so high on, and I just realized that they're both NFC North running backs. But I like I said, the Vikings are going to be a good team, and that's why I like Latavius Murray this year. Dalvin played for how many games? 3 or 4 last year before he got hurt, and he was great. He did what they needed to do. He was a pass catching back, but I don't see him being as efficient as he was during those 3 games, especially coming off an injury. I guess the positive thing is he is resting for basically 1 whole year before coming back into playing. So it's not like Wentz, who tore his ACL at the end of the year, something like that. So he had more time to cover. But if we're gonna say Jordan Howard is your RB1, which I would, because I love Jordan Howard, then your running backs aren't bad. Starting running backs aren't bad.
Yeah, there's definitely a question mark there with Dalvin. I'm not a. Obviously, it wasn't the strategy I wanted. I really wanted Melvin Gordon and Jordan Howard, but obviously that didn't happen. Just 2 comments on the. I really think Oakland turns it around this year, especially with John Gruden there. I think they have a great offense, and I think Amari has to be the guy if they're going to be good. So I'm living and dying by Oakland. And not only do I have 2 starting running backs in the NFC West, North, sorry. I have 5 with
Oh yes, you do.
Aaron Jones, Ty Montgomery, and LeGarrette Blount. Frankly, I really think that my third running back is going to be one of those guys from Green Bay. I'm hoping that Ty catches a lot of passes from Aaron Rodgers this year as kind of he's going to be their dump off guy until Aaron Jones gets back after 2 games. And unfortunately, because Sam has a lot of them, I think Green Bay is going to be really good. And I think these divisions are just going to beat each other up. And I really wish I had Kerryon Johnson from Detroit to complete the package.
Yeah, I mean, you missing. Oh no, you're not missing it. You actually have from all 4 teams.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Aaron Jones he's the better back in terms of explosiveness. He's the faster back. He's gonna get the bigger plays, but he's not as good in pass protection. Jamal Williams is really good there, so I think there's too much of a question mark, even with Aaron Jones back, of who's gonna get the ball, or even how much they use each player. So even if they declare a starter, Mike McCarthy is so bad with this. It's never he could say Ty Montgomery is the starter and nobody would believe him. So yeah, it's just it's a messy situation. Yeah, and then obviously your Josh Gordon pick, that speaks for itself. So we'll just move on to Short's team because it's been an hour and 3 minutes, so we're a little over time, but it's okay.
First one.
You want to talk about Short's team?
Sure. We'll just pull it up here. Obviously, his ranking is low because he didn't have a defense, but we know that. Why he didn't draft a defense over a kicker surprises me. But regardless, let's look at the top. I love Matthew Stafford this year. I took a flyer on Galloway. Uh, I really think that again, that whole division is just they're gonna beat each other up, and they're gonna need to have a good defense and have even better offense. He's got Stephon Diggs, Doug Baldwin. I think his wide receiver core is extremely well balanced, with Diggs having and Ty having potentials to have huge games. I think Doug Baldwin is the guy in Seattle and will have a very consistent week to week showing. Saquon, we we know the stats coming out of the combine. To be frank, I think we all really want to see him succeed just because of the freak talent that he is.
Exactly.
Not that we want the Giants to succeed, but he's got the tools to be the next guy, right? The next Adrian Peterson. Like he's a freak. Derrick Henry, I talked about him earlier. All good there. Jordan Reed obviously is going to be a challenge, but I think he stays healthier this year than he did last year. And then if you look at his depth, I mean, between Chris Hogan, Emmanuel Sanders, Kerryon Johnson, Tevin Coleman, and Garcon, he's got a lot of people to choose from with matchups when it comes to picking and playing players. So to be frank, I really, really, really like Nick Short's team, and I would not be surprised to see him go back to back with his team right here.
I completely agree. I really like Short's team. The only question mark is the tight end position. If Jordan Reed cannot play, or if he gets hurt, that. I mean, I guess you could always just put in Vernon Davis if he's not taken, but I think the question mark is too big to roster him, and I think this is something everyone has to go through at least once in their fantasy career, is drafting Jordan Reed and realizing how big of a mistake it was. So,
oh yeah,
yeah, and the defense over the kicker, I agree with that, but there's always a few surprise defenses, like the Saints last year. Ravens defense was really good last year, so I think he'll be fine. But I think Short likes his team a lot too, and I don't know who he would drop to get that defense, and it would probably be Bilal Powell or Sterling Shepard, right? Or it's got to be one of those two guys. I mean, I like those guys, but you need a defense.
I'm gonna guess it's Sterling, but I know he had Sterling on his team the last couple of years. Maybe he's got a love thing for that guy, but
I think
either way, he's going to be drop someone that I think we'll probably pick up and then drop again.
Yeah. Yeah, but other than that, I didn't have anything to add on to your comments. I do really like his wide receiver group, especially since they all have wide receiver one potential. So, yeah, just a very solid overall balanced team.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, that's every team. So I already said mine, but so my winner of the draft was definitely Jake, and the loser was definitely Steve to me. Who do you think won and lost?
So my winner, but not picking myself, I'm gonna say is probably Nick Short, and the loser is Steve. I really don't like Steve's team. It's kind of got that flash at first, but then if you like dig into the weeds, it's like really bad.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna say Steve is my least favorite team. I could see. I really didn't like Paul Teleska's draft, but this trade has really helped him out. Putting all your money on three ponies wasn't a strategy that I was ever fond of. But hey,
yeah,
here's what it is.
I know, and I think, yeah, based on just the draft, those two are definitely my choices. But yeah, Paul with Julio now is definitely interesting. I think with Julio, he has a top three team, probably top 3 or 4 team. That is so many. There's so many studs on that team where Bell and Hunt are gonna be beasts this year. I'm not super high on Hunt, but he's gonna do well. And Paul, with adding Julio, just gives him that extra dimension of having a 40-point week any week. So
definitely.
Okay. Before we go, anything you want to say? Any hot takes? Who like X person's gonna not score many points this year, or who's gonna have the worst record, something like that. But
Here's a hot take. Hot take is that I'm going to finish the season with the best record, but I'm not going to win the championship.
okay. I think you're gonna have the best record, but you're gonna lose in the playoffs. Is there any reason for
I'm
that?
going to. I just. I. It's a hot take, man. Hot take. You gave me the schedule for this an hour ago, so I was trying to think of something hot to think of, and that's pretty hot, I think.
Okay, I could. Well, I mean, if you're so high on your team, I'm just wondering why you think you're gonna lose in the playoffs.
It's playoffs are especially with only 2 week playoffs. I'm not a big fan of having just four teams make the playoffs, and only 2 weeks of playoffs. That really just, in my opinion, it's almost too lucky. Like the those four teams, especially with play the playoff records that we've seen go in, like 7-7. I mean, just because you score more points than the other one or two other teams that have the same record, and you make the playoffs, and then could potentially just boom 2 weeks in a row. I don't think the best team wins every year. That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha. All right. I'm gonna just throw a few out here. I think, and I'm not trying to hate on you, Steve. If you listen to this, I think you're gonna score less
He won't.
points than Wallet. I think Steve breaks Wallet's record for lowest points in a game or in a week. And it'll happen on either Fournette or Kamara's bye week. It's gotta. I mean, if it doesn't happen one of those weeks, then it probably won't happen. But it's everything points to it happening unless he is a good manager and like makes trades that are good for him or picks up players on the waiver wire who are worth it. Um, he, I don't see him doing or I do see him breaking Walt's record. And another hot take, I guess this isn't that hot, but I think everyone's team this year are pretty uh, middle of the pack, just like they usually are. But I think 7th through 10th place is gonna have multiple teams with 7 wins. So like at least two. I could see maybe even 3 teams with 7 wins. So you're 7-7, but you just have less points for than 4th place, and you're going to the beer mile playoffs. So
Yeah, you could see a 7-7 team go to the beer mile playoffs, and a 7-7 team go to
the championship.
the real playoffs.
Yeah,
And you could see one fully lose, and you could see one fully win. So like that's crazy.
yeah. I think there's so many decent teams this year that it's gonna make pick 'em really hard. That's
It
for
really
sure.
is.
Unless you're gonna go against Steve, it's gonna be really hard. Sorry, Steve.
Uh, Let me just say then, as we close it out here, I just wanted to say, everyone, I had a great time at the retreat. I love the time that we make for each other, and love every part of this league, and staying in touch.
Yeah, I will second that. I had a really good time. Whoever suggested Vegas, I hope it wasn't Sam. Um, Great idea. It was probably the best time I've had with you guys. And a real upgrade from where we went for our first retreat near Gore Mountain, where we barely had internet for the draft. But yeah, definitely looking forward to that every 5 years, and yeah, just a lot of fun. And this is definitely the highlight of my September to January. Even probably more so than actually watching football is just getting to shit talk you guys and having to pay pretty much full attention to my phone or something every 5 minutes to see if a transaction is made or something like that. So just probably the best time I've had with football is with you guys. All right, well, that's the first episode. I think we'll probably in the next few weeks decide how often we're going to do this. But as I said, if anyone else wants to join in and come talk with us about whatever we have to talk about, we
You have to fill out a proposal, submit it to us formally,
and an essay,
and we will make a decision.
Just let us know. I really would like this to be a constant thing, because I know how much we enjoyed Plummer's points. every 3 months the past few years. So to be able to make this a consistent thing, I think is a lot more fun than just hearing one person talk. And if you have it more often, then it's just really fun. So that's it for the show. Thanks for listening, guys. I know it was about 70 minutes of your time, but I hope you enjoyed it.